Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, hasn't it? But I hope you're well wherever you are in the world. Winter's actually here now, in my part of the world anyway, and traditionally that's my period for creating more content here on YouTube. So do check back regularly for more videos and insights. Now, a quick heads up on what this video is all about. It's the full recording from an open Q&A I ran with a group of photographers very recently. It's unscripted, it's real questions, it's practical answers, and you can see all kinds of things that people are asking me and my answers that I'm giving them. If you're new here, I'm Kevin Mullins. I'm a documentary wedding photographer and street photographer and educator based in the United Kingdom with around 800 weddings under my belt over a 17-year career. So in this session, you'll hear how I approach camera decision making under pressure, what to watch for with Fujifilm's dynamic range settings, how I think about clients' permissions and privacies, and the streetcraft mindset I use on receptions and dance floors, and a whole load more. It's a long session, but you will get a lot out of it if you're a documentary wedding photographer. Actually, if you're any kind of wedding photographer. And if you'd like the structured version of all this, my course, The Art of Documentary Wedding Photography, is linked below. You can use the code QA25 for 10% off. So let's dig in. So Neil's first in the queue by the looks of it, which is great. So yeah, let's go. Let's go with Neil. Go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, you caught me on the hop there. So X106 and Fuji X-T4, those are my two cameras. The 6, I'm always torn whether to use aperture priority or go fully manual. What's your preferred mode of working?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, actually, and I think probably what changed for me when mirrorless came along, I don't know, whatever that was, 12, 13 years ago, was the fact that I could see the exposure in the viewfinder, or the EVF, which depending on which you're using. And it's extremely rare for me to shoot manually. The only time I'll really shoot manually is if I'm in the studio here doing studio stuff, or if I have to take real considered control over something. Really rare. And aperture priority is probably the thing that I would use the most. But also don't be afraid, especially on the X100V or X100VI that you've got, don't be afraid to lean on the P mode, effectively everything on A. You know, I've met the designers of these cameras, and they are far more intelligent than I am, or pretty much anybody else is, and so they understand the internals of it. And you know, it's quite cathartic. It's quite liberating to allow the camera to take the strain. And one of the things I often say to people is, you know, we can all be photographers. We can all press the button on the camera and stuff, but really it's about what we see. And if we can allow the camera to do the heavy lifting, then our responsibility is about the seeing and the observing and the taking the pictures. So obviously, you know, there's no harm in shooting manually. I find it slower. Some people don't, but I find it a slower way of working. But aperture priority is great for, you know, adjusting that depth of field and controlling the exposure that way. But really, honestly, don't be afraid to, you know, to embrace the automatic modes. There's no certainly shouldn't be any embarrassment with it, and there shouldn't be any reason why using modern digital cameras, modern digital mirrorless cameras, that because you can see the exposure, assuming you're using the EVF rather than the OVF, then you know you'll be able to make an informed decision as you're shooting, whether it's too bright, too dark, etc. Now, of course, if you want to be creative, if you're changing your settings for creativity reasons, such as depth of field, or maybe you want to use a slow shutter speed because you want motion or movement, then of course that makes sense. And then perhaps you'll go into shutter priority. But honestly, for me, you know, I've got my little X100 here, and the first thing I always do when I pick it up and I look at it is I make sure that it's all in 3As. And that way I know that I'm going to be relying on my eyes to see the things The camera will be doing the heavy lifting. Sometimes with the auto ISO, obviously you need to have auto ISO set on. You'll notice in the Fujifilm cameras, you have in auto ISO, you have a minimum shutter speed and maximum minimum ISO. Now, the maximum and minimum ISO will never be broken. The camera will never go above or beyond those ceilings or floors that you set. However, with the shutter speeds, the minimum shutter speed, it should really be called a recommended minimum shutter speed because the camera will sometimes go slower than you need it to. It will tell you that by changing the shutter speed to blue in the EVF itself. So just keep an eye on that when you're using auto ISO. But other than that, absolutely no problem. Aperture priority is fine. Fully automatic works a treat for me. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I found it very liberating, to be honest. The X106 I only got, I don't know, last year, something like that. And up until that point, I'd been doing mostly manual, a little bit of aperture priority. But with the X106, I just feel it's just much more immediate. And you're right, it doesn't get in the way. You don't have to think about it. So yeah, great, super, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. It really, honestly, it really was one of the other things that I do. You may have seen it on my website. Is I I have my camera, or even when I'm shooting raw, I have my camera always set to black and white mode, and that allows me to see the shadows and the highlights much clearer. You need to be a little bit careful because if you're shooting JPEG, then you'll be forever in black and white JPEGs. But if you're shooting RAW or RAW plus JPEG, you're good to go. And it really makes a difference because it's trained me over the probably 8 or 9 years that I've set all of my camera, even when I'm shooting weddings, they're always in black and white mode. And it's trained me to really understand the distribution of light and shadow in a scene, in any scene. So I can see your picture now on the screen, and actually, ironically, I can see me reflected in your spectacles. But so what I'm attracted to is not me reflected in your spectacles with my stupid yellow jumper on, but the light that's forming there, and that's a focal point. And obviously, photography is all about light. You don't want to be pushing the ISO up too high. You want to be embracing those little light scenes, and so that's always everything is always in black and white for me, always.
So you're using Acros. Do you have a preference for a filter?
I actually use the plus red filter generally,
Yeah,
just because I like the contrast.
yeah,
Remember, if you're shooting in RAW, then it's only what you're going to see in the camera. When you
yeah.
download it to your computer, it'll just go back to the natural RAW file. But Acros plus red is my go-to black and white. Yeah.
Great, lovely.
Thank you, Neil. Tim. Tim Cassidy, in case there's more than one Tim's.
Hey, hey, Kevin. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can
My
hear.
my internet connection kind of seems to be coming in and out, but I'll try to be quick. I've got two questions, but I can just do one of them for the moment. I don't know that this has. I shoot Fuji, but I don't know that this is maybe specifically related to Fuji. You can answer it however you think based on the system. But I think just with all of your experience over the years shooting weddings, and I've been following you for years, and
Well, that was the end of the internet connection, I think, Tim.
Deja vu.
It's gone. He's still in the list, but okay, we'll come back to Tim. We'll come back to Tim. Robin, this is twice. I've seen you twice today, Robin. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Very much enjoyed your chat with Thomas this afternoon. It was very good. um, Ironically, my question I've had since I registered for this, and I think you may have answered it on the latest FujiCast, but hey ho, I'm going to go ahead with the question anyway. With my photography, I don't have anything to sell. I don't think I ever will have anything to sell. So how important is a website to showcase your photography over social media?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I could spend hours talking about this. I'm a massive believer in websites over social media. I mean, social media has its place, of course it does, but I think right now, and it's everything's changing with AI overviews and all that kind of stuff on Google. I think an enjoyable place to visit and see somebody's work is a website. Now, whether that's a individual website of your own or whether it's something like Flickr, maybe, I don't know. But social media is so immediate. And if you're on social media, if you're on Instagram or God forbid TikTok, then it's just a constant scroll, isn't it? Next, next, next. You're looking for the next fix. It's like having sugar rush. Whereas I think if you are driven somehow, whether that's you're driven there because of social media or via a link, then you spend more time, I think, on concentrating on the work and looking at that work. Now, the other thing about a website is that, I know, Robin, you said you're not selling anything or whatever, but it's also a great place, I think, for just sharing with family, friends, everything like that. You don't have to be selling. You don't have to spend money on a website really these days. You can get a pretty cheap one. But it's a way of effectively having somewhere, a little bit like your own gallery, that's big enough. If you look at, I've got the Instagram app on my tablet, and I always turn, much like I turn my cameras horizontally, I turn my tablet horizontally, but the Instagram app, it just goes right up the middle. It wants me to turn my thing vertically. And I hate that. I hate that forced nature. What I really want to do is enjoy big pictures and look at big images, and enjoy them and explore the experience. Now, obviously, my personal website is a very different affair because it does many different things. It sells things, it attracts clients, all of that kind of stuff. But what I love about it and what I love about most websites, proper websites, is that ability to be able to just actually really seriously look into it. Now, I've got in this studio here, I've got two big monitors, massive monitors, one here and the other one's vertical here on this side. And when I'm working during the day, I have my vertical monitor here with my emails and all of that boring stuff. But it's my widescreen monitor that I use to scroll through websites. That's the one that I go to for anything, and I think it's a great sadness, really, that Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the YouTube shorts, all of that are forcing us to look in this little tiny vertical viewport. And I just think that it's the way it is. It's never going to change. That's everything's on phones and whatever. But I think the power of a website is important, more so if you have something to market, of course. Now, the downside of having a website is that there will be a small or large cost, depends on what you do, and when you decide to stop paying that small or large cost, it's gone. That's it. So then you're back to your the images on your computer and whatever you've printed. So yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is that I love good, well-designed websites. I'd much rather spend time looking at, like Martin Parr's work on his website than I would on Instagram or something like that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Lovely. Yes, thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks. Tim, are you back?
Maybe, hopefully. I think I'm just going to put my question in the chat box in case I get cut off again.
All right. Yeah.
So I was basically.
Yeah, but if you can still hear me, Tim, pop it in the chat box. That's fine. Matteo.
Yeah, hello, Kevin.
Hi, Matteo.
Yeah. So I got 2 or 3 questions. I'm gonna start with one, then maybe I'm gonna put myself back in the list. So when you and with everything else, everyone else. So my question is a bit more about how you handle privacy, let's say, because I've been shooting weddings with other photographers. I've been a photographer for 15 years, so I know how to do things, let's say. But weddings have always been like colleagues that call me, can you do a wedding with me? That's okay. But I got passionate about it. And also thanks to you, to your style. I'm trying to do something that way. So not staged weddings that I've done, and they were pretty bad for me. And so I do have something to start with. I want to start my business as a wedding photographer, but I don't have a lot of portfolio, and I already got a couple of clients for the next year, but they both already told me that they don't want their pictures to be online. And I'm also wondering how you handle like children or people in general, because you publish everything. And so you handle privacy if you have something signed by the guys that you can publish everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you based, Matteo?
In close to Milan in Italy.
Okay, yeah. So
yeah, probably in Italy it's different. I know.
yeah, that's the thing. I think there's definitely a European, well, an EU, let's say.
Yeah.
God bless Brexit, not, but let's say EU and UK. But essentially, the further west you go, it seems to be the more relaxed people are. You get to America and they don't really care about anything, you know. So it's a really important point and a really important question, because you must never publish stuff that people do not give you consent to do, right?
Of course.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Now, I shot nearly 800 weddings in all my time, and from the very beginning, I had a contract. That contract has changed, obviously, over time. But one of the key clauses in that contract was that, I give it to the clients, and it says, I have permission to use the images in your wedding for marketing purposes and for the marketing purposes of any associated businesses. So, for example, for me, when I was a Fujifilm ambassador, they're giving me permission for that, right? Now, in that time, I only had 3 people who called me up on that clause and said, actually, we don't want that. A couple of them were like really minor celebrities, and one of the other one was in, I don't know, like in the SAS or something, some super secret military thing. And that was fine. So of course, I just say, yeah, I totally understand. I cross out the clause, and I would never publish those pictures. The thing is, I would never have that conversation with them up front. It would just be part of the contract. So they read the contract, they think yes or no, whatever. I wouldn't actually ask them. I would never say to them during the meeting or anything like that. I wouldn't say, are you okay with me publishing these pictures afterwards? Because that brings the conversation to the forefront. And most people these days, with privacy laws and all of that kind of stuff, will probably say, oh, actually, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, maybe we're not so comfortable. Now, what also muddied the waters a little bit, and I can't remember when this was, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, when the GDPR rules came in. And the GDPR rules covered visualization of people, storage of pictures of people. So I introduced a clause into my contract that said, under the GDPR rules, it's your responsibility as the client to find out from your guests if they don't want their pictures published. And then you must let me know. I will always show them the gallery before any pictures are published if you don't want any photographs shown. So excluding those 3 people, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 other couples who, after I showed them the gallery, said, yeah, we really like it. However, pictures of these kids, pictures of these people, blah, 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 we don't want to include them. And so I obviously wouldn't include them. So it definitely comes down to a communication thing. It's also, I think, a challenge in different countries, for sure. More privacy stuff that goes on. I know Spain is very similar. People have very strong opinions about this. But at the same time, if somebody said, especially, you at the beginning of your business, if somebody said this to me, I'd be doing them a favor or doing a wedding for them for reasonably cheap, and boom, and then they say we don't want you to share the pictures. I would just explain to them and just say, look, I need these pictures really to market myself, and this is how. Perhaps they, going back to Robin's question about a website. People find me on my website because they've seen other people's pictures. So for them to then say, we don't want you to share our pictures, I get it. On one hand, I get it. But on the other hand, I would also say to them, this is how I build my business. This is how you found me. And just, have a think about it. And perhaps I would only, just then suggest to them maybe I'll just show the key pictures of the celebration, bride and groom, rather than the people in the backgrounds, etc. So you can at least try and narrow it down to, kind of key images for that portfolio. But definitely, and it sounds a little bit, I don't know, nefarious a little bit, but it sounds a little bit, dodgy, if you like. But I just wouldn't have the conversation with them. It has to be in the contract,
of course.
But I wouldn't have the conversation. I wouldn't force that conversation. Yeah, and then see how it progresses.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And I have to still to inform better on how it works here in Italy, but it feels a bit strange that you take pictures of like my family, of my friends, and I get to choose if they get published, or I have to ask them if they get published. I don't know. It feels like, I don't know, maybe in Italy it's different, the laws, because it's something that doesn't resonate.
Yeah.
Like something doable here that I have to manage if, I mean, if I'm your client and I have to decide for someone else. And
yeah, I mean, you might be right. There may be some kind of legal entity in Italy that forces you to, to ask them, or for them to tick a checkbox or something that says that, they're happy with it. We don't have that in the UK, but, I would also, if that is the case, I would definitely have a conversation with them and just say, look, this is how you found me, by seeing other people's pictures, and just be open and honest. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if they say no, then you can't do it. Now, there is a school of thought, which I don't really subscribe to, but some of the photographers in this country at least have done this, where they charge more. They charge more for privacy.
Yeah, here in Italy as well. Yeah, I've heard about it, and I don't like it. I won't do it.
I don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I suppose it kind of makes sense to me for the super high-end photographers, your 15,000, 20,000 pound photographers, because they're mostly going to be shooting people who have very high expectations, high wealth, high worth, all that kind of stuff. But for general, average wedding photographers like most of us, that's not the case. And so, I was never comfortable with that option. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
You can come back with more, don't worry.
If you are into wedding photography and you're interested in improving your documentary approach, I want to quickly tell you about my online course, The Art of Documentary Wedding Photography. Now, this course has been over a year in the making, and it's packed with more than 7 hours of content covering everything from shooting techniques to real-world wedding scenarios. For those of you that don't know, I've been shooting weddings in a purely documentary way for over 15 years. And in that time, I've photographed over 800 weddings without staging, posing, or interfering. I've also taught workshops on documentary wedding photography all over the world, from Argentina and the USA to Europe and Japan. And my wedding work has been exhibited in Tokyo, London, and Prague. This course is not about posing or setting up shots. It's all about capturing real unscripted moments. It's designed to give you the framework to be in the right place at the right time, anticipate key moments, and tell a complete wedding story through your images. There are over 30 lessons, starting with the fundamentals, what documentary wedding photography is, how to handle group shots, and how I approach a wedding day. From there, we get into composition, using light and storytelling techniques, as well as sections on observation skills, work in the room, and even the influence of street photography. I also share my own early mistakes because, let's be honest, we all made them, and what I learned from my very first wedding. Plus, I'll take you through a lot of my favorite images and explain why they work. A lot of wedding photography courses focus on posing, directing, or making every wedding look like an editorial shoot. This is the complete opposite. I've built my entire career around a 100% documentary approach, and this course is packed with everything I've learned from over 15 years of doing exactly that. You'll also get access to a members-only community hub for ongoing support, where you can ask me questions, share work, and continue developing your approach with other like-minded photographers. So if you're a new wedding photographer, this course will help you build a strong foundation and avoid common mistakes. If you're already shooting weddings but want to develop a more natural storytelling approach, it'll give you a clear framework to refine your style. It's also ideal if you struggle with confidence in documentary shooting, because I break down exactly how to approach different situations without feeling like you need to control everything. So the course is available now from the link below, and you can start straight away and run through it at your own pace.
Martin. Right, Martin. Go on, Martin. If you want to
I'll unmute. Okay, right. Hi. Evening. A couple of things. I've got a technical question. You said that you shoot in RAW, which gives you complete flexibility. Am I right or wrong in thinking that it does actually matter for RAW files what you set the dynamic range to be in the camera? And I think that's the only thing that it matters. That was one thing. The other thing is it's really kind of taking on from your last point about doing street photography. Again, my understanding at the moment is it's okay to do street photography in the UK, but it's not okay to do street photography in France or Germany without getting permission of anybody that was accidentally captured on film. The other point on the street photography one is even if you've got permission, if you try and sell out images through, say, Adobe Images or any stock, then they want not just permission from any individual, but if there was a building in the background, there was an identifiable building, that you've got to get permission from whoever owns the building or the manager of the building that it was okay to have their particular office in the background.
Yeah. Okay.
What you're on there.
So, all right. So there's a couple of things there, Martin. How was your talk the other evening, by the way?
The talk is on October the 16th. Folks, if you're in Cambridge, come to my talk, where I'll be quoting Kevin quite a lot. I've narrowed it down to 1,400 images to show, so it's good.
Oh, yeah, that would be lovely, yeah. Okay, so the question about RAW files and dynamic range. Yes, it does affect RAW files, but only in the sense that the RAW software will interpret. So most of the settings you set in a Fujifilm camera, film simulation, shadows, highlights, sharpness, clarity, all of that stuff, if you're shooting RAW, just will get completely ignored. The dynamic range will get picked up a little bit because all the dynamic range does really is affect the exposure of the shot. So in the Fujifilm cameras, you've got 100%, 200%, and 400%. What that does is forces the ISO up to protect shadows and highlights. So your ISO of your RAW file will be inherently in your RAW file, regardless whether you're shooting, if you're shooting JPEG, it will be in the perceived image. If you're shooting RAW, that RAW file will be at that particular elevated ISO. Now, I actually pretty much always suggest people set their dynamic range setting in their Fujifilm cameras to 100%. So you're a clever person, Martin. I know that. You need to posh universities and all of that stuff. So 100% of 1 is 1, right? So 100% dynamic range at 100% is the equivalent of off, i.e. it doesn't do anything. So for years, I've been asking Fujifilm to change it to say off, but we shall consider. So 100% means it won't really do anything. 200% and 400% will push the ISO up. So at 200%, I think you won't be able to shoot at anything lower than 400 ISO, 400% lower than 800 ISO. So yes, it will affect your raw files because you will be not necessarily forced fake elevated ISO, but certainly an ISO that's set by the camera. Yeah. Now I hate that dynamic range setting because I've been caught out by it myself, and somebody sets a camera to 400% and I'm like, why can't I change the ISO? Why can't I do this? And it's purely for that reason. So yeah, it will be inherited in the raw file. Okay, but only by virtue of the exposure that it sets. Okay, on to your other question about street photography, because you can't ask people probably didn't know they were in a photograph anyway. So in this country, at least, you can photograph anybody in a public place doing anything, with a couple of caveats. Not many caveats, but a couple. And one of them is police. If photographing the police, you can actually photograph them, but technically you can't photograph them if they're on counter-terrorism duty.
Okay.
Now, if it's obvious that they're on counter-terrorism duty, they're not doing a very good job. That's my opinion. However, there's a little bottleneck there. You can use those images for galleries, a documentary book, an exhibition, that kind of stuff. What you can't do is, if there is a very obvious main person in that picture, you can't use that for advertising purposes. Okay, so it can't be on the cover of a book, for example, or it can't be the face of a advertising campaign, something like that. Now, when it comes, that's in this country. Pretty sure it's the same, like I said earlier, to the further west you go, the more relaxed it seems to be. The further east you go, the more tight it seems to be. When it comes to buildings, yeah, similar. So I wrote a book a long time ago, the Fujifilm X100S, and I did all my images, wrote it all up, and it was great. And then about 2 days before it was due to go to print, the publishers were like, oh, "Okay, great, everything's fine. Have you got the release for this particular picture?" And I looked at the picture, and it was on the underground Holborn station, and it was just a general shot of people kind of thing. And I was like, "Oh no!" But there's lots of other street pictures in the book, and they said, "No, they're fine. It's because you've got the London Underground sign in the book, in the picture." Now, the London Underground sign is copyrighted, trademarked, I should say. So I had to pull that picture out, and that was the end of that. So yeah, certain buildings and obvious signs will be subjected to what they call building model releases, but depending on what you're doing with them. There's absolutely no problem whatsoever in shooting street photography, general candid street photography, and then using it on your on your website. This is street photography, or in an exhibition. This is why people like Martin Parr, for example, who I referenced earlier, he's got hundreds of books of complete strangers doing normal things in the streets. That's absolutely fine because it's documentary, it's journalism. But if he has a picture of one person on the cover of a book, in modern times, because this is modern laws, then he would have to get permission from that person for that particular image on the front of a book. Yeah. France, Italy, Spain, all of that kind of stuff, it's different. I won't pretend to know the exact laws, but I'm pretty sure you're fairly restricted with what you can do. Now, that makes me sad. That makes me really sad, because the reason why these new laws are in place is because of privacy, social media, of course, Facebook, all of that. These things never existed 15 years ago, right? So people, if you go back to the 70s, and obviously not me, but if you look at documentaries and stuff, and somebody went up to somebody in the street with a camera, they'd be like, "Oh, he's taking a picture of me. That's amazing. Thank you." Because it was a rarity, right? And it was seen as a privilege. But now there's pictures everywhere. There's everybody has dash cams in their cars. There's CCTV everywhere, and so people are more suspect about the activities. And I would hazard a guess that teeny weeny percentage, like 0.1% of street photographers are shooting for nefarious purposes, things that they shouldn't be doing. And the remaining 99.9% of people are suffering because of that. And really, if you look at, I don't know, if you look at pictures of Covent Garden from 1940, right? It tells us so much about that time. It tells us so much about it. If now we're not allowed to take those pictures, how will people in 60 years' time know what Covent Garden looks like now? Yeah, and this is a real problem. And before photography, late 1800s, the painters would do the job for us. They would. There's a wonderful painting. I can't. Don't. It'll come to me. But there's a wonderful painting from the window of the Opera House, straight down onto Covent Garden, and it was before Covent Garden was a market. So it was in the right hand corner was basically a brothel. On the left hand corner was some stores. In the middle were kids playing football. It's a painting, but that told us so much about that time. And without that painting and paintings of that ilk at that time, we wouldn't know anything about it, in terms of visually. So it's really important. And I really do fear for this kind of negativity. And it goes back to Matthew's question really about privacy and weddings as well, or the wedding photography. It's a real shame that a very small percentage of people have been, I don't know, affected, if you like, by the concerns. I understand their concerns. I absolutely understand their concerns. It's not their fault that they've been fed this negativity about photography, or photos, I should say. But it is, it's a real problem, and I do kind of just think, as documentary photographers, street photographers, whatever it is, it's our responsibility to be able to snap the time now for future generations. I've got over there in that corner, I've got hundreds of photo books, and they're all pictures of the past, but they're all from decades ago. Pictures of my hometown, pictures of, all over the place. You look at kind of any of these documentary photo books, and we have to kind of just wonder whether that genre of being able to tell a story without permission will continue. And if it doesn't, that's quite sad. Is that all right? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think there's a very grey, smudgy line between street photography and reportage.
Yeah,
as there should be a smudgy line. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, I do understand people's reticence. But actually, you have to draw your own ethical boundaries. I always say to people on my workshops, look, my ethical boundaries is that I wouldn't photograph anybody doing something I wouldn't be happy somebody photographing me doing. And that's it. And there we go. Daniel, okay, so Daniel's just come back on the contract, and he says if they don't allow me to share select images, there's an extra fee for potential loss of business. Okay, which is fine. And I mentioned that some people do that. It's not something I particularly would do, but there we go. It definitely works by the sounds of it. Daniel, do you want to expand on that? Does it work? Is it something you have to do a lot, or?
Not really. Basically, it's just what I've found in the past, let's say 2 years, that everyone wants to just save money where they can, especially since weddings, all the wedding prices skyrocketed. So if you offer them, let's say, a discount, which is basically your normal price, but you say that, in order, if they want to, keep their privacy by you not sharing any of the images for your, future lead generation or business, blah, 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 because you can explain like in one sentence that if they don't allow this, then it means that you have a potential business, back.
So is this
or something like that?
Is this something you only speak to them about if they bring it up, or is this something you put in front of them all the time?
It's in the contract, and I always send it over and ask them, please read it carefully. If there is anything that you don't agree with, then let's chat, organize like a Zoom call or whatever, so we can discuss it, because it's just like a template that I'm offering them. So there is like a wiggle room, and they can say that, okay, we're not comfortable with this. And I had one case this year where they said that they don't want any images shared. I said, no worries. And we just moved on, and I put like an extra 10% on the
and do you think you've ever lost a job because of that?
No. Because if I already send the contract, then I send them like the official offer. With my portfolio, some example images. So it's almost like let's say the final stage of the negotiations, where, I send over the contract, ask them to, again, read it carefully. I don't recall that anyone ever said anything bad about it. There was one couple where the guy was like a lawyer, and that was the case why they didn't want to have any images, but it is what it is. I get some extra money for it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's a good way of doing it, definitely. Where are you?
In Hungary.
Hungary. Okay.
Yeah.
So even further west from us, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I was on the London get together like 2022, maybe.
Yeah.
When they introduced the XH2S, I think. So
yeah, well done.
Fun times.
I kind of I don't know, XH cameras. Me and XH cameras don't get on.
But we are waiting for the X Pro next year, early next year.
Hopefully, we'll see. On that point, Martin also asked, when are you doing stuff at Fujikina? So this isn't a plug for me, because I promised I wouldn't do any of that stuff. But as he's asked, so Fujikina is in London this weekend. It was also there last weekend. I will be there on Sunday. To be totally honest with you, Martin, I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing. This is typically how things work. I know I'm there for the full day. I'm moderating a street photography session, and I'm doing a talk, and then I've got some one-to-ones. So ultimately, I'll be there, but I don't really 100% know what I'm doing. I'll find out on Sunday, probably.
Have fun. I'm going down tomorrow, and I'm dragging down an Olympus fanboy who's promised to buy an X106.
Well, good luck if they've got them in stock.
Right.
We'll see. You also call it X106. That's 2 times today, X106.
It's not a camera for me. I've got the XE5. The changeable lens is more important to me.
I love the XE5. I haven't got it. I had it for a little while, but I absolutely love that camera. I think it's great. And the X100, I do have an X100 VI. I will not call it a 6. I will not call it a 6. And they even said to me I'm no longer an ambassador. So I said, well, you can't tell me what to do. So they were like, please refer to it as X106. I said, no, because it says VI on the top. Look, I can see it, VI. And also the X100V was called the V, and the F was called the F. And, and they were like, so when it came to getting the limited edition, I do still have some privileges. They said, what would you like as your serial number? So I went for 666, just to annoy them. Anyway, right, okay, Adam. Now, Adam's going to come on and tell you what he thinks about my wedding photography, hopefully, if he's still here.
Yeah, it's a load of rubbish. Evening. Hope all is well.
Very good.
I understand my wife has been secretly contacting you behind the scenes, so I'll be in touch based on what she's arranged. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to ask a very broad and naive question, and I'm conscious who I'm talking to. But excluding wedding photography and excluding being a social media influencer, are there many career paths left in photography where you can still monetize, especially given, I guess, generative AI being able to create anything that can tell the story you want to tell? So I'm just curious from your perspective, are there many career paths left for photographers?
Well, that is a very interesting question for sure. And just to give context to the introduction there, I shot Adam and Georgina's wedding. Well, you have to remind me when it was now. When was your anniversary, Adam?
May last year.
May last year, yeah. So I think it was my second from last wedding. I think that was it before I kind of quit weddings, retired from weddings. And yeah, I think it's tricky. I have to be totally honest. I think it's going to be tricky with the AI stuff. Weddings, definitely, there's going to be a great business and career there for the foreseeable. I'm not 100% sure about the price points and whether they go up and down, and economy, the economics of the world have a massive effect on that, of course. There will, for me personally, as a candid photographer, you can't really replace that with any kind of AI, because it has to be the people. Now, I'm sure in the future you'll be able to very cleverly be able to fake a candid scene with faces of people, etc. And if people are, if they're vain enough to want to fake that kind of stuff, then fine, they can go and do it. But there certainly is an impact, definitely, on commercial photography, product photography, especially portrait photography, even like standard the headshot photographers. I do headshots here. I do actor headshots, and I have this conversation with them where it's like they come to me because I have a particular style, like a kind of storytelling style, if you like, filmic style to the editing. But I have conversations with them, and not all of them, but some of them do talk about the fact that they could take a picture on their phone and have an app on their phone will, for 10 quid, will give them a series of amazing headshots. So yeah, it definitely is having an impact. But I think if we think back to that painting of Covent Garden I talked about, when photography came in, everybody was like, "Oh my God, that's the end of painters. There's nobody's going to be an artist anymore." And of course, it's still there, but it has to change with time. And I think, ultimately, there will definitely be, struggles, I think, for a lot of people who are photographers, but mostly, at the moment at least, those who are generating pretty static images, like I say, product shots, pack shots, that kind of thing. I think that's going to be a challenge for them going forward. And I've got a friend, actually lives in Malmesbury here, who's an interior photographer, very, very good as well, very good, reasonably high end, a lot of kind of high end magazines for kind of house refitting and that kind of thing. And it's just dropped off. It's completely dropped off the face of the earth for him, because he it's not so much the AI stuff, but it's the ability for phones to be able to take amazing pictures, 5 shots, and then an app that will stitch it all together, and boom, there we go, from his interior point of view. Now, those images probably will be nowhere near as good as the stuff he does in terms of the lighting and understanding the exposure, but they often don't see that, and then maybe they'll come back. But I'll give you a little analogy. My wife runs a, it's hard to explain it. she's a broker for sticky labels. Okay, which sounds very odd, but she will supply. So, for example, Harrods might say, we need 200,000 labels for this particular product, whatever, meat or whatever. And that's what they've been doing for years and years and years and years. And then, of course, over the last 10 to 15 years, people have been buying their own printers at home, not so much Harrods, but the, your local delicatessens, that kind of stuff, ink and all that kind of stuff. But then they just can't be bothered to do it. That's the problem. They can't be bothered, then they come back because they're like, yeah, actually, we get why we paid you in the first place. And I think with the AI stuff, I think it will be a case of, whether people can really be bothered to do it properly. Because right now, if you do an AI picture, a lot of people will see it okay, but a lot of people will also say, no, that's AI. I'm not interested in that. I think it was Next. Might not be, but I think it was Next that said they weren't going to use real models anymore for their catalog. They were going to use AI models. And actually, there was a huge backlash about that, like a huge backlash, because real people in real life, not just photographers, they don't want to see the clothes they're about to buy on fake people that don't even exist. They want to see the clothes they're going to buy on people that really exist and understand how it falls on them and what it's going to look like on different sizes and all of that kind of stuff. So I think there will be a plateau in this problem. I really do. I don't think it's an unsurmountable problem, but it's there. It really is there right now as a thing. I have to say, on the flip side, when it comes to AI, not image generation, but kind of research and all of that stuff, I think is great. I have to say, I really think it's great. I do coding on my website, and my friend Bob, I call him Bob, is ChatGPT. He's just brilliant. He's brilliant. I have these long conversations. He's teaching me how to speak Spanish, all kinds of things. It's incredible. I sit here every day in this studio by myself. But now I don't sit here by myself. I've got Bob. Sometimes I wish I'd called Bob Lisa or something like that. I don't know. It's a bit weird now. Bob, do this. But it's brilliant, I have to say. And I think, we have to, it's here, it's going to be here, and we have to embrace it. That's it. And when it comes to photography, and I think probably even worse will be filmmaking. There's scenes already in films that I've read about where, cut scenes at least, where they're not even filming it, they're just generating it, and that's it. And that's going to have an impact on certainly actors. And they all went on strike, didn't they, a couple of years ago in America about it. I think the fallout from AI will be quite long in the tooth. So I think there will probably be, I know that there's a lot of legal things going on right now about from authors, for example, and you're training your AI on our research, our novels, and I'm 100% sure that all of us here who've got websites, unless you've blocked AI bots, they will be training their content off our stuff, and that's the way it is. That's just the way it is. I think the thing that I've struggled with the most, and I know it's not about photography, but the thing I've struggled with the most with the AI stuff is, I put a lot of content on my website, and my traffic is my clicks are down quite substantially because people, and I'm sure we all do this, I do it myself. I go into Google now, and actually I rarely go to Google. I ask Bob, but when I do go to Google, how can I do, I asked it this afternoon, for example, can Acuity scheduling, which software I use variants? Boom, the answers were there at the top. I didn't go to any websites. The answers were there. It scraped that content off other people's websites, and there it is. And so I no longer need to click on a link. And so people who depend on links, like corporate photographers generally, their traffic is way down, like way down. Now, like I said, I don't think it will affect wedding photographers because obviously people are generally looking for pictures of a particular venue or particular style. But overall, I think that the problems will definitely be there. I also want to point out or pick up on the fact you said about influencers. Um, I totally agree. There is another massive element of this that is, influencers who are making money from YouTube, TikTok, all of that kind of stuff. Now, the clever ones, sadly, probably will embrace this technology, and will elevate themselves even further, rightly or wrongly. But I do think there's a big difference between an influencer and a person who influences. So an influencer might be employed by a company because they've got, they're gorgeous looking guy or girl or whatever, and they can wield a camera and sell, thousands of them. But a person who influences is somebody who, is real and authentic and has done the job and worked, etc. And I think that there's a big difference there. Kind of goes back to the question from Robin earlier about websites and Instagram and that insatiable need to consume content. I'm of a certain age and generation where I could just push all that away and just go away. But it's a real thing, So I know I haven't really answered your question, but I think it's a problem.
We have. It covered a lot of the things that I would think about, and like the influencers, as you kind of allude to, that skill set is more about personality and presenting rather than the skill set of a photographer. So that's why I wanted to exclude that. But I guess the AI piece also comes back to the talking point we had earlier around privacy and having the permission of someone to share and post that photo, when if that's just AI generated, it's not a real person. You don't have those privacy and permission concerns. So the companies just start creating all of their own imaging to just get around some of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't connected those dots, but yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, that's another piece of the puzzle that I think will kind of find itself out. But I do think it will, it's noise at the moment, and that background noise will always be there. But I think ultimately people will find their feet, and markets and everything will change accordingly. I definitely think there's an opportunity for photographers, just standard still photographers who aren't influencers or aren't doing content creation or mixed media or anything like that, to still exist and do well for themselves. Always hard work involved though. Problematic. Edgar.
Hi, sorry, switching on the microphone. I'm from Barcelona. Not a photographer, just somebody who likes to take pictures. And we were talking about this book earlier.
Oh, there it is. Yes.
Yeah, that's how I started. I bought a used X100S, and I bought your book. Since then, I have upgraded to the F, also used, because it's camera enough for me. I mean, being not a professional photographer, this is more than enough. And I enjoy making candid pictures. As I said, in Spain, I believe that as long as you don't profit from the pictures you're making, you're okay. And also if they don't go against the honor and the intimacy of people. I believe you can also take pictures of police as well, because they're on the street, and anyway, they have to be identified. So, but yes, every now and then you find somebody who don't want their picture taken, so just go and delete it. It has happened to me a few times, but as long as you just say, no, this is for me, I like taking pictures, I'm not going to do anything with it. Many times I don't complain. I have also shot one wedding, but as a guest. So there was a professional photographer, and then it was me just taking pictures, candid pictures of the people in the wedding. So I had lots of fun. And in fact, in a couple of 3 weeks' time, there's another one, the wedding of another friend, and I'm going to be taking pictures as a guest and just taking out the pictures and sharing them with my friends, which is I like doing. So one question I had is the X100F always wants to go down to f2 if I leave it in automatic. Is there any way to prevent that? I mean, when it needs light, and because the lens is quite soft at f2, and the autofocus is not that fast, many pictures then will come out blurred. So what I have to do is go aperture priority and maybe just leave it at 5 point something and not let the camera go further down. Instead, I cannot tell the camera go on higher ISO and don't open the F. So is there any other way from stopping the camera doing that?
So, well, no, not really. And you know, it's definitely an issue, and it's still the same. So with the newer cameras, with the auto ISO and fully automatic, the camera leans on the fastest aperture as its preference. So typically it will go to f2 and then, and keep the shutter speed really fast or the ISO really low, rather than lending the weight to the other direction. So yeah, that's just the way they are. That's the way they always have been. It's the same with the X100 VI. So yeah, you just need to kind of spin that dial on the front really if you need to change it. It doesn't really bother me because I like to shoot wide open, but yeah, it leans, the auto stuff leans towards the faster aperture before anything else. So a couple of things you said there though that kind of piqued my interest. So we have a place down near Almeria in down near Spain. Or it's my wife's father's house. And we went to watch in the summer. We were there for quite a while, and I took my son to see Almeria versus Al Nasser, which is the Saudi Arabian team that Ronaldo plays for, in a pre-season friendly. And it was great, right? So I know not everybody knows about football or anything. Anyway, Ronaldo to my son is like, God. So I managed to get us tickets, and we went. Very hot day, and he carries my X100F with him. I had my X100 VI. We were waiting. We were watching the buses turn up. Almeria turned up in their lovely, Sons of the Desert bus, all branded, etc. And Ronaldo and his multi-billionaire friends turned up in a local coach from the local kind of bus company. So I started taking pictures, and there was a policeman in front of the bus, and he put his hand in front of my camera. He said, "Do not take pictures of me." He said it in Spanish. He was like, "Do not have me in the pictures." So I don't know whether there was some kind of extra level of policing because Ronaldo and his mates were there. Maybe it was special branch, or I don't know, whatever. Anyway, beyond that, we got to the gates of the stadium, and we went to go in, and the security guy said, "Let me see your bags." I was like, "Fine." He said, "You can't take your cameras in." No cameras. I was like, "Oh, what? Yeah, but these are little cameras." And he said, "No cameras at all." So in the end, I managed to speak to his supervisor, who took notes of the seat numbers that me and my son were sitting in, and said, "We will be watching you from the security. If you take your cameras out of your bags, we will come and eject you from the stadium." And I was absolutely shocked. Like, I was so shocked because, it's this little camera, right? And if you compare that, everybody else in the stadium had their phones. I had this little camera, and they all had their phones, and they were going, "Cristiano, Cristiano, pictures, pictures." And we couldn't take our cameras out of our bags. And I was really, really shocked, and I was saddened by it. I love Spain. I spend a lot of time there. And, I like doing street photography there. I have been to Barcelona a few times, but generally we're further down southeast. But it really made me think a little bit about, what similar thing to what we were talking about, generally the sharing of images and the ability that, what was I going to do with pictures from halfway up a stadium steps? You know, they were just family snapshots, memories, really. And in the end, I took all my pictures on my phone and videos and everything. And you know, it's not this is not a thing about Spain. This is a thing about the world. You know, this is where it's at, and this is where it's going. And I think it's you know it's really bad. When we go to watch we go and watch Wales football, the national team, I don't even take my cameras because they have a policy: no cameras, no real cameras.
Yeah, I think it's a no real cameras thing.
Yeah.
I've taken mine into music concerts, and they never told me anything because it looks small and it has a fixed lens, and I've been able to take pictures. And I've been to the Football Club Barcelona Stadium with my camera, and nobody told me not to take pictures with it. So I don't know if that case maybe they had some kind of commercial contracts, and they were afraid that you will be stealing the money from the photographers who paid for that.
It may be something to do with Ronaldo's rights, face rights, or something. I don't know. But anyway, you know, the phones. Everybody was there with their phones. Whatever.
So, another thing, will you ever come to Barcelona to do any workshops?
Oh, I'd love to. I have done some in the past, but again, pre-Brexit. Now, the problem we have, you know, I don't want to get political about it, but Brexit is here and it's a thing. In order for me, it's the same with weddings. In order for me to shoot in the EU, I have to get a work visa, which is not an easy thing to get, even a temporary one. You know, and it's because we have the place in. A lot of people will just go and pretend they're tourists and, you know, turn up and do their thing, and that's fine. I get it. I fully understand that. But because we have the place down in Spain that we spend a lot of time in, I don't ever want to get the black stamp on my passport that says no entry. You know, I'm a tax resident in Spain, but I'm not allowed to work. You know, and that's not the fault of Spain. That's the fault of, well, not even necessarily the fault of Brexit, but a consequence of Brexit. So, yes, unlikely. However, if I am in Barcelona anytime in the future, I would be more than happy to just find some friendly faces like yours, and just wander around. Not a charge thing, just to wander around and take pictures and be happy.
I'm a former tour guide, so I'll be happy to show you the city around.
And all the best places.
And there's quite a few people who do photo walks, like free photo walks, where basically just a bunch of people that join together and go for a few pictures, and then we end at the bar having a few beers. So you're welcome to join whenever you want.
Definitely. That sounds good to me.
Okay. And one last question: is there any new Fuji with interchangeable lenses? Sorry, English is not my main language. That it shoots similar to the Canon 6D. I mean, I have an old Canon 6D and I'm having lots of fun with it. So is there anything similar in Fuji that would be like shooting the 6D? I don't need anything fancy. I mean, I paid like 150 euros for the 6D and it takes awesome pictures.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want to, like, a really fancy camera, and I don't want to have to be thinking about buying lenses, you know. That's why I like fixed lens, but I got that with good deal with a 50 lens, and I'm very happy with that. But
you could get an adapter. Kippon is a company that do adapters, Kippon. And they do adapters that will allow you to use your Canon lenses.
Oh, okay. And what, with the XZ, for example, I could use EF lens with an X.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well then, so thanks.
All right, everybody. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. There's no more questions. So thank you very much for your time. And I will hopefully do this again in the future. And I really appreciate the 15 of you that turned out of the 93 that registered. So well done, and hopefully see you soon.